Welcome to English 1120 at Southern Utah University. This is our Introduction to Grammar course. And in this video, we'll look at Sounds of English Part 2 and how they connect to grammar. We will do a review of the English supersegmental features, and then we'll focus on two of them, rhythm and intonation. In a previous video, we defined segmentals and supersegmentals. Segmentals are the individual sounds of the language, such as consonants and vowels. Supersegmentals are features of the language that go beyond the individual sounds to the word, sentence, or discourse level. We already looked at word and sentence stress. In this video, we'll look at intonation and rhythm. What is rhythm? We could think of rhythm as being the pace and flow of the language. What is the pattern or the beat of the language? We can think of this as a musical scale. Does the music score have the same quarter note for every single meter? Or is there variety in the pacing of those notes? In English, the type of rhythm we have with the language is centered around clusters of content words. So not every word or every syllable receives equal time or space or stress, but instead we get this clustering around these stressed units, which are focused on the content words. In a previous video, we learned about content and function words. Content words are things like nouns, adjectives, adverbs that have the primary meaning of the sentence. Content or function words are primarily grammatical, and so they exist to help tell relationships between those words. The content words are the cluster or the nucleus of this cluster, and then the function words are kind of squished around those clusters. So let's look at three phrases here and see how the rhythm of these phrases works. So our first word is consultation. Then we have Count von Staten. Could I stay then? All of these have a similar rhythm pattern. And that's because they all have kind of a stress nucleus with the A part of the sentence. And then the other syllables or words are clustered around that. So even though there's different numbers of words in these examples, they all have the same amount of time that we would say them in English. Let's look at this example sentence here. It contains three content words: birds build nests. Birds build nests. Every word receives equal stress and equal time within an English sentence here because they're all content words. But when we start adding function words, we're going to start seeing the clustering happening. The birds will build nest. The birds will build a nest. What's happening here is it takes the same amount of time in English to say birds build nests as it does to say the birds will build a nest. That's because we still have three main stress units. And even though there's more words, the function words are just being squished into the content words. All of the birds will be building their nests. All of the birds will be building their nests. Birds build nests. The birds will build a nest. All of the birds will be building their nest. It's almost the same amount of time for each of the units, no matter if we add more function words or not. And so this is the rhythm of English. To be able to produce, speak English in a way that makes it intelligible to others, we actually have to get good at this rhythm. And we need to get good at de-stressing the function words. If we don't, we're not getting that good rhythm in English, and it can actually make it more difficult for English listeners to understand a sentence because they're used to this rhythm. Now let's talk about something that's somewhat related to rhythm and continues on with other supersegmental features, and that's intonation. Now there is a difference generally, we would say, between tone and intonation. Tone is generally at the segmental level. So it's at the sound or the syllable level. Chinese, for instance, and some other languages have tone that influences vowel sounds, for instance, and that a vowel is actually 4 different vowels depending on which tone is used. English, it's not this way. You could, the word the, you could say the. It's still the same word, It's still the same vowel sound. It doesn't change just because the tone has changed. Instead, intonation at English or tonal changes really matter at the phrase or the sentence level. And that's where meaning can change, depending on whether we're using primarily a rising intonation or a falling intonation. So let's talk about falling intonation. It is the most common intonation pattern in English. Most utterances in English are in a falling pattern. Normal statements are in a falling pattern. WH questions are in a falling pattern. So most of English is that sort of start at maybe a 1, you might go up to a 3, or start at a 2, you might go up to a 3, but eventually you'll go down to the 1. And that's where your sentence or your utterance will end. Now, another pattern we have is the rising intonation pattern. And so this one would be at probably a 2, but by the end of the sentence, it rises to a 3. This is used most for yes/no questions, especially when we're trying to show that there's doubt or uncertainty about something. We also use it when we are listing items in a list. And it is also used when speakers want to show that they're not ready to yield or cede the conversation. Essentially, they're saying, I'm not finished yet, don't interrupt me. I still have more to say about this topic. So really, the rising intonation functions in 2 ways: to show doubt, but also to let the listeners know it's not done. Keep waiting, okay? I'm not finished yet because I have more items to my list or because I have more information that I need to share about my story or my ideas. What's really interesting about this is that this can help listeners of English better understand how to participate in conversations. When I taught English language learners about working in groups and how to take control of a conversation, how to enter maybe the conversation, people from some other languages and cultures might say, well, I really shouldn't enter a conversation unless it's silent. Then that lets everyone know that the speaker has finished talking and now it's someone else's turn if they would like to speak. And generally in English culture, especially US English culture, that's not how people usually view conversations. That gaining the floor, or maybe a less impolite way to say interrupting, can happen before that. And it's because we can listen for intonation patterns. And when we can hear a falling intonation, we know that someone is in the process of finishing and we can jump in right away. If we hear that rising intonation pattern, even if it's a statement, that's the speaker letting us know, I'm not finished, don't interrupt me yet. So for an example, this might say, someone's telling a story. I went to the store with my friend and we saw something that we wanted to buy, and we were going to buy it, but then we realized we didn't have enough money, and so we had to go home and get some more money, and then we came back and we bought it. And then I dropped off at the end there with the falling intonation, and that lets the listener know that I've completed my story. So how does these suprasegmental features relate to pronunciation in English? Well, we've talked about it. One, that can help communicate things like uncertainty, doubt. It can also communicate things about whether the conversation is completed or the speaker has completed their portion of the conversation. So in this video, we reviewed suprasegmental features. We talked about rhythm and how rhythm is important for understanding the important parts of the conversation or the utterance, that it's going to be clustered around those content words. And that's what we're listening for, because that's where the primary meaning is. We also talked about how mostly English uses a falling intonation pattern, but we use rising intonation for confirmation doubt, but also to help communicate that we're not complete with our portion of the conversation.